It's Sally Loftus, and I'm the author of the Fully Human Resources newsletter here on LinkedIn. And today I'm excited to be here with my colleague, Sam Gordon, to talk about employee engagement. Welcome, Sam. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Sally. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this today.
Thanks. Well, before we get started, are you willing to kind of share a little bit about yourself for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got out of college, and like a lot of people, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I found my way to a startup museum. We're actually building a museum in downtown Manhattan, and I fell in love with it. It was an incredible project, and there were all sorts of people passing through, and really collaborative adventure. But unfortunately, right after it opened, the recession hit, and I found myself sort of back on the job market. And while I could have gone after some, trying to build another museum or getting involved in that world, what I really wanted to do was build something again. So over the next maybe 6-7 years, I worked through a lot of different startups, some of which made it onto my resume, some of which did not. But then around 2013, I luckily sort of found my way to Vera Solutions, where I work now, and I'm actually coming up on my 10-year anniversary later this week.
Thanks, Sam, for that great overview of you and your organization. And this month's topic is about employee engagement. And, I have this newsletter, Fully Human Resources, because I see so much humanity being sucked out of people's lives today, especially in the workplace. And employee engagement really came to mind for me because so many people are leaving because they feel like they're not being treated well. And, engagement is about the level of commitment and enthusiasm that people have about their jobs and their organizations. And so part of that engagement is really listening to employees. So why do you feel like it's important to continuously listen to
It's
employees?
such an important question. And for me, it really comes down to three things. And the first and highest order is about community, right? We are a group right now. Vera is 122 people, and every day, all of those people are working hard to make Vera succeed. We have an obligation to each other, right? To be taking good care of each other, understanding each other's needs, and enabling and supporting each other in the work that we do. And some of that can come through sort of traditional structures, like telling your manager, right, or the team you're working on. But sometimes there's other ideas, there's other stuff that needs to find an outlet. And employee engagement is part of how we find an outlet for those sorts of ideas that could make people's experiences better, that could make Vera better, that could make the work that we do more impactful. So that's one. Two is around, sort of related, is around retention. So much of what we're trying to do, we have some IP and we have the things that we're sort of building, but by and large, it's about the people who are here. And our goals are to be above 80% retention for all staff and 90% for senior staff. And that means people being really kind of bought in and connected. And we're really fortunate that the people of Vera seem to be sort of biased toward that approach, right? They want to be connected. They want to care. There's an immense amount of personal effort and care that goes into the work that we do. We need to match that, right? We as teammates, as friends, as colleagues, as all of that, and as leadership need to be matching that care. And part of the benefit of that is that hopefully people are spending longer and longer at the company and driving more value over their time here. The third is maybe a little strange, but it's about kind of innovation and iteration. So much of the cool stuff that Vera does internally, or even that we do with our clients, started out as either a question or an idea from someone who works here. It's not just, our CFO or our CEO or our CTO or whoever, has lofty titles saying, hey, here's what we'll do. But it's someone, identifying a gap, right? And their perspective is often just as valuable and insightful as someone who's been at the company a lot longer, right? You could have someone who just joined and maybe they have a really sort of creative view of how we could fix things or how we could do things a little bit better.
Thank you for that overview, Sam. That was really interesting to hear. Kind of the three things you said were community, which I heard finding an outlet, retention, about keeping people because people are, are the ones who are doing the work, and then innovation, which really aligns with your organization's mission. So I'm curious, how do you measure employee engagement kind of in those ways or in those buckets at your organization?
Yeah, it's a moving target to some extent. We have I'll give you a real answer in a second, but I think it's worth starting with the fact that we do a ton of internal initiatives around employee engagement, and some of them have really clean metrics that come out of them. Some of them don't, right? And that's okay. Some of them are things like, meeting with your manager or your managee regularly, right? Or some of those things that don't have a number associated with them, but are still so critical to maintaining that ongoing conversation and ensuring that there is that real connection that people can feel to their teammates and their work. In terms of how we track it, there's the main thing that we use is something we call the Pulse survey. It's a quarterly survey that we send out to the whole company in the middle of each quarter. It's 13 questions that stay the same every time, and then one rotational question, which will be something that's timely, something that has to do with something that's going on at the company right now. Within that, we're using the employee net promoter score as the main way that we're measuring engagement. And it's quite interesting to look at because we can see, we're still not that big. We're a really close-knit company. We can feel when things are going pretty well, either across the company or, in a given location or within a given team. We can feel the ebbs and flows. And the NPS really matches nicely to that. It's a good, it can be a good pre-indicator to know, like, oh, maybe something isn't going so well. But it can also, it also sort of affirms what we can all see and feel. One of the things that we do with the Pulse, which isn't necessarily about directly measuring engagement, but I think it's more about stoking engagement, is we debrief the results on our quarterly all hands call each time around, and that's a pretty high level picture. We look at we sort of look at our biggest movers on the different questions. We talk about the scores, maybe we talk about participation. And then we get into, because we also do ask a few qualitative questions, they're really open-ended. We get into what are the activities that are either new or existing that pertain to that feedback. But then we have team level debriefs, and that's where we have the space, if we need it, to have a deeper conversation. And it's pretty interesting. Sometimes there's a lot of energy to dig deeper into the Pulse and what people are feeling or thinking or going through. Sometimes there's not, right? And both of those are okay as long as we have that space. That's what's really important.
So, wow, that's really interesting information, Sam. And kind of what I'm hearing from you is that in my mind, it feels simple to have like a 13 question survey. But then I think about, like, as a leader trying to schedule conversations, kind of do some data analysis, have those conversations and trying to understand kind of what's the return on investment, right? Or what's the benefit of having those conversations. So, are you willing to kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll answer. I don't know 100% is the real truth, right?
Mhm.
Because we can see retention is the most downstream thing we can look at,
Mhm.
right? So we can see that as we have added more of these initiatives and done some other things, like we saw our retention go pretty consistently from the high 60s to low 70s into the low 80s and even mid 80s, right? So we can see, cool, like something is working. I'm not sure we can necessarily tell which of the many levers we pull. But that's actually part of the strategy. The strategy is to say, look, we don't know, no one initiative will work for everybody. So how
Mhm.
can we have a whole bunch of initiatives that'll make a difference, that'll make sure that there's a space for everyone, right? That there's always a venue for the conversation or the feedback. And that's where, like, the Pulse is great for some things, right? It's wonderful for that quantitative side. It's okay for some of the qualitative feedback, but it's anonymous. So there's no way to follow up.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that we always sort of harp on is, like, this is great, share some feedback here. But if you're answering twos and threes to some of these questions, you also have to go talk to someone.
Mhm.
And for some people, that's a very natural spot, right? They're really comfortable speaking up. Maybe they've either built a lot of trust with a manager or a mentor or whatever. They've been around for a while. But for some people, that can be a little harder. So we have a whole bunch of other structures in place to try to make that a little easier. So we host office hours across all our different departments, and they look a little different, one from the other. But that's just an extra space to say, like, hey, here's a question we can. It's a little bit of, like, loosen the tie conversation, right? It doesn't have to be
Mhm.
quite so structured and formal. It's an open conversation, and it's a really good space. Like, I know with the ops office hours that I host, a lot of people don't show up with questions. They just want to listen. So they're not necessarily
Mhm.
ready to raise something, but they know that some people are, and that becomes a good space. We similarly, a bunch of our leaders will host Ask Me Anythings with some frequency, just to try to keep the conversation flowing. And we also have this cool initiative called Great Minds, where we pair members of our leadership with everyone in the company each quarter, and just get together for a 45-minute chat, and you can talk about whatever you want. And we kind of roll that over each quarter, and you get paired with someone new. And it started during COVID, but we've kept it because it's such a nice way as we've grown to build meaningful connections with people. It's a 45-minute conversation. It's not everything, but again, to us, this is about stitching together enough different ways that we are building touch points and creating engagement. And I think I said this before, but I just want to say it again. To me, employee engagement is a two-way thing, right? It's not our employees engaged with the company. It's are the people who work here engaged with each other. And that could be leadership to everyone else. That can be from department to department or team to team or just individual to individual. It's really about how are we all sort of plugging in and bringing however much of ourselves to work as we're comfortable with. How are we all doing that?
Thank you. That's super interesting. And I love that kind of what you shared. There's a lot like thinking about how some people are all in the office or hybrid, or remote, that those are all different ways that people can use that, the Ask Me Anything, the Great Minds, and it's like you said, it really is kind of those connection points and having like a sense of belonging. And I love that people show up to the office hours and don't necessarily have questions to ask. They just want to hear what people like. I mean, to me, that's a sign of engagement, right? That people are interested in hearing what other people say. So I love kind of the multi-pronged approach y'all have to employee engagement.
It's really interesting. We've never struggled. We've never had a shortage of sort of desire. In our team, we talk about sometimes that every day we're coming to work trying to make Vera an even better place to work. And we've always had really high internal standards for what it's like to work here. We have pretty high work standards too, but I'm talking about the experience of working here. What we've had to get better at is what do we do with all that energy, right? We had all these people sort of very willing to say, hey, here's a thing that could be better, and here's an idea for how it could be better. But to your point from a little earlier, right, that takes a team, right? So if I, again, on the pulse, there's a lot of people putting a lot of work into that happening each time, into the questionnaire going out, into the analysis, into the building the deck and reporting out on it. It's not a low touch effort, but it seems to be really paying dividends.
Well, thank you so much, Sam, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I know you've got a lot going on, and I'm excited to share kind of some of the things that y'all are doing and some of the great work you're doing with my greater audience. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, Sally. Thank you so much. I'm always eager to talk about these kinds of things. I love getting into employee engagement and how we can make work a little bit more of a positive experience.
Absolutely.